Hey guys, good evening. My name is Doug Meyer, one of the associate pastors here at Trietsch, and we're really glad that you have checked us out here at Facebook Live. This is the last week of Reality Check, week 4, and we are in store for a real treat tonight. We have 3 licensed professional counselors. All day long I've been thinking I was going to say it wrong, and I did. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a minute, but our goal tonight is to have a casual conversation about counseling and therapy, and we're going to unpack that in just a minute. Hopefully it will dispel some of the fears that all of us have experienced when we've thought about going and getting some help and what that looks like, and maybe when a loved one has said, hey, you need to go get some help. So we got a lot of questions. We hope that you are sitting there by your laptop thinking, hey, I'm going to send them this curveball or zinger or whatever, and if it's appropriate, we'll throw it on the table tonight. So you know who I am. And I'm just going to let you guys go down the row and introduce yourselves and say a little bit about what your practice focuses on. And at the top and at the bottom of the talk tonight, we're going to give them a chance to say how you can reach out to them. So stay tuned.
All right.
You're up, bud.
All right. My name is Clint Donaldson. I am a licensed professional counselor. I've been in practice at various settings for about 7 years and worked in acute psychiatric care and then addiction and inpatient treatment. And now I work for a private practice called the Center for Integrated Counseling and Psychology. And we provide therapy to people. Our goal is to provide therapy to people where they work, live, play, and pray. So we partner with communities all over the Metroplex and Waco. And so really wherever you are, there's probably a therapist in your area. That's kind of our mission. So
say real briefly.
Yes.
They're watching you right now going, ooh, he looks like somebody I could talk to. How would they make an appointment?
Yeah, so the centercounseling.org. You can go online. Our phone number's there if you want to call, or you can actually make an appointment online, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
So
if you didn't get that, we'll come back to it at the end.
Yes.
Who are you, young lady?
I'm Laura O'Reilly, and I'm actually a licensed clinical social worker, a little different than a licensed professional counselor. So my practice is here in Flower Mound. I have my own private practice, and I work with kids, adults, couples, and I have a history of past in school social work, so I bring that to my practice and really work from the strengths perspective and really identifying all those things that kind of buoy us up in our lives when we're looking at patterns that are really bringing us down. And you can find my website at Laura O'Reilly, so it's OREILLY LCSW.com.
Another night we'll explore the licensed clinical social worker difference. Sorry,
We could unpack all that another night.
Yeah,
yes,
we will. Okay.
That's fine.
Friend, who are you?
I'm Chris Robinson. I'm a licensed professional counselor intern. And what that means is that I am in supervision, and I'm supervised by Kathy Champ at Rock Hill Counseling Center in Aubrey, where we focus on equine therapy and using animals in therapy with our clients. So I'm out there 1 day a week, and then 4 days a week I'm actually seeing clients here in Flower Mound. I can be reached by phone at 972-822-8338, and you can learn more about me at cjrcounseling.com or at rockhillcounseling.info.
So the reason these guys are here tonight, they're free because we gave them all that time for great plugs. So I'm going to already jump out of order a little bit because I've noticed we've already started doing this. We use the words counseling and therapy interchangeably. Laura, can you differentiate? We had a great conversation a minute ago, and none of us necessarily agree. So,
Sure.
what do you think?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think they are interchangeable terms, especially here locally. I refer to myself as a therapist. I see myself as a leader or a guide through the therapeutic process, which is a lot of self-work. So I think that they are interchangeable. I refer to myself as a therapist. I think counseling to me kind of brings up images of more advice or legal counsel. So while that's just in my own perspective, I do think they are interchangeable. But I do have more of a preference to be called a therapist myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys want to add anything on top of that?
Yeah, I think I agree that they're interchangeable, and I'll respond to either.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that just creates a little differentiation is that counseling is kind of the umbrella over which therapy occurs. And there are a number of different types of therapies that are used within the counseling process. So I think it's right to call us, either, because that's the environment we live in.
Okay. So don't get hung up on that tonight. Just know that we're going to ping pong that around all over the place. So that said, be honest, have any of you guys ever seen a therapist? Gone to counseling?
Absolutely.
What's the deal?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, what is the mental barrier? So I want you to answer that, and then maybe for yourself or somebody else, what's the stop? What's the mental barrier of going?
Yeah.
Who wants to take that?
So, well, for me, one of the first things that I did, and this was part of what got me to counseling, was going to see a counselor. So I saw a counselor for my premarital counseling, but we had a lot of things that were going on. My wife were getting married, her parents were getting divorced, and so that was a really big thing. And then we were really young; we were 19. Still in college, and we just had a lot of things that were going
Sure.
on. And so we went and saw a counselor and kind of did premarital, but really it was like, and there was just so much that we were unpacking, and like we just kind of laid it all out there, and like that counselor did a really great job for us and helping to care for us in kind of this struggle time. And so that was my first experience with counseling, and then it was like I had this thought of, why are my wife's parents getting divorced after 30 years of marriage? And so that began my journey of trying to figure that out, and here I am.
Look where it got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Laura, Chris, y'all want to jump on that
Sure.
question?
Sure, I would love to chime in. That I have seen a therapist probably since third grade on and off. I had a lot of anxiety as a child and really was helped by a therapist. And ever since then, I've just held it in such high esteem. But throughout college, I needed some assistance, and premarital counseling, we did that. Couples therapy, individual therapy. I always say, if I could go to therapy every day, I probably would.
And we have a question from David asking, what can we do to remove the stigma around counseling?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, okay, so there's an assumption there's a stigma.
Yes.
Right.
Would we all agree?
Yes.
Yes.
I do
All right,
think
so
Definitely.
what drives the stigma? Let's come at it that way. Chris, what do you think?
I think that there's a lot of fear involved in going to counseling because you don't know what to expect.
Mhm.
You don't know how vulnerable you're going to have to be. You don't know how deep somebody is going to dig with you, or how they're going to be going about it. And I think that there's a fear that's associated with that. And I think that one of the most important things about going into counseling and finding a counselor is finding one that you are comfortable with, that you have a rapport with. That's the most important thing, and not to try to engage in the therapeutic process with somebody who you're not comfortable with.
I just recall my very first appointment, I always imagined that this person was going to somehow just excavate all sorts of things in my life that I wasn't ready to be excavated.
Yeah.
Almost
Right.
like going in and having your wisdom teeth pulled without Novocaine or something.
Sure.
And so I made this big, scary story up in my head, and 1 or 2 or 3 appointments later, I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Did y'all ever feel like that? They're like, I think this is like I can benefit from this.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that's the other thing in the stigma of it is just it's the fear that drives that. And then I think people have a difficult time being honest with themselves anyways,
Yeah.
and so sometimes they're afraid that they're going to have to be honest,
Yeah.
and open. And so hopefully when they do actually come in after
Yeah.
I'm going to make that call. Oh, I'll make it tomorrow. Oh, I'll
Right.
make it tomorrow. You know.
Yeah.
Then they come in and see that it is a safe place,
Yeah.
and that That's why I think the difference in our profession is that we do provide confidentiality, and those are the things that I think help hopefully tear down some of that and allow for people to come in.
I think something too is that if I start seeing someone and it doesn't feel right, I'm like stuck
Yeah.
with that person.
Right.
And I want to encourage folks that are listening that you are not, it is not personal to a therapist. If you see them
Right.
one time, it's not a good fit, and you
Right.
find somebody else, that's really what the process is about, is that relationship with the right person who you can really benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help them find someone else.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually
Absolutely.
hope. Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually hope that they will find somebody
Right.
if they are not comfortable.
Instead of
Yes.
just
Right.
bailing out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let me
It's
help
not
you
about-
to
it's not
somebody
about
else.
us.
Yeah.
Right.
What else we got?
Yep, we have another question. When someone is dealing with depression or mental issues and they won't face it, what do you do to convince them that therapy is for them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So let's figure out how to. You have a good friend, college roommate, next door neighbor. Hey, I need to talk to you about, what's the first handshake, phone call, email?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
You know, I think that making it safe for
Mhm.
somebody to talk is the most important thing. I'll start out by asking somebody if they've had previous counseling experience or not, and what was good about it and what was bad about it, so that I can understand where they're coming from and be gentle
Mhm.
with them.
Yeah.
Because if they're dealing with depression and they're having trouble acknowledging or even discovering the source of it, it's a whole lot easier to accomplish that through conversation than through inquisition.
All right, let me put you on the spot. So I'm your brother, and I'm just a no good, grumpy, son of a gun, and I have been for a long time.
Mhm.
And everybody in the family says he needs to get to counseling. He needs some help. Moody, dark, brooding, drinks a lot. What's that first? What's that moment? Help somebody practice tonight. What would you say? Is it in person? Probably. Right?
Yeah.
So
I think
take
it's
that
in
ball and
person.
run with it. What do you do?
Yeah, I think it's in person. I think you go to them and just begin to one. I think it's always important to ask questions. So how are you feeling? What's going on? What can I do to help support you? And then have you thought about going to counseling? Have you thought about this? And if they're still resistant, the thing is people are going to they have to make decisions for themselves, and if they come to counseling and it's forced, it's not going to work. It's just not, and that's where they maybe come once and they won't come back.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many teenage boys I've had that don't come back because
Yeah.
they don't want to. They just don't want to do it, and I tell parents that, and I try and coach them on that. So I think that's important to remember, that we can only take people so far.
Laura, have you had the experience of just a family member, loved one, somebody in your practice who, you so desperately see what they can't see?
Yes.
And how do you hold back? How do you know that, it's their work to do, not yours?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I kind of have two separate answers, because it would be very different if it was a friend or family member. So I'll answer in that kind of respect. That, I think it's sharing my own experience has been a really powerful tool. And so I find that through sharing my walk with therapy and how, I can imagine how it must feel. Here's how I felt. Has opened up. So if I'm kind of willing to take the first step towards vulnerability, then there's a more likelihood that there will be, an opening up to me, and hopefully some trust that I could help give them a resource, or, and I think that's important too. If you're wanting to have a conversation with somebody about it, have some really good resources to go with it.
Yeah.
good.
Because if it opens up, it's just the right time to.
Well, it's
put
kind
some
of like
resources in their hands.
you've earned their trust. And that you've been vulnerable and you're asking for that back.
Yeah.
So we have another Facebook question.
Yep, Shelby asked the question from the standpoint of an HR professional. She said that there's a lot of professions in which if you are treated for mental illness and it's found on a background check, it can hurt you, like a police officer. What do you say to people who need to seek out help but are fearful of that risk?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I worked in the addiction field, and there's a lot of addiction in police officers, firefighters, and other first responders. And I know in the medical field, it's the same thing. Doctors and nurses and even lawyers. You know, you can be disbarred, or you can lose your license to practice medicine and things like that. But there are ways and resources, and I don't have all of those off the top of my head right now, but there are ways and resources to work around some of those things. I have a very dear friend who was a firefighter, actually lost his job, lost his EMT license, all of that. Went to treatment. Was able to go through that process of going through treatment, got better, and has been sober for several years, and actually earned his license back. So it's possible with those types of things. I think that, again, just encouraging people that your life is more important than your job.
Excited.
That's tough to hear sometimes, and you think, I don't know what to do, like I don't want to lose my job, but man, your life is more important. So I think that's the thing to keep in mind.
And I think there's also the aspect of confidentiality
Right.
is huge in our business. And when somebody is recommended for counseling, say from an HR person that says, you might benefit from receiving counseling, they can go through an insurance panel.
Right.
And going through an insurance panel is going to require that certain information may be released to that insurance company as the payer. There's also the option of going private pay,
Right.
which keeps everything completely confidential, and there would be nothing that could show up in a background check.
Yeah.
So I'm the aspiring patient. Do I get all of those questions answered at intake or my first appointment, or where can I lay all of my fears on the table, especially as related to HR and privacy? And
Right. Yeah.
I mean, does that happen? I call and I say, hey, I'm a whatever profession. Can you
Right.
talk them through that over the phone or what?
Yeah. And I mean, I think for all of our licenses, we all have, disclosures that we go over, HIPAA and going through all of that usually in that intake appointment, So we're going to go over that with everybody from the very beginning and cover all of those things to help them to understand.
I've actually had people in that position call, and in the phone conversation, before they even set up an appointment, they say, here's my situation.
Right.
Right.
Will I be safe?
Yeah.
I'm coming to see
Yeah.
you, and I can let them know before they even come in that.
Right.
It's interesting how all of this is still kind of what I call the dance of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to get every base covered, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And back to your point, there comes a point where you have to take that leap
Right.
for your own health.
Yes.
I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about the difference between going to see a counselor therapist for mental illness versus mental health.
Sure.
Those two words too, I mean, we've kind of unfortunately lumped them all together in our world today.
Yes.
Laura, what's the difference? And jump into that.
Yeah.
Let's kind of sort that out.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of an analogy here to kind of help us see it in our brains a little bit. So for me, it's kind of mental health is similar to any health regimen, right? Eating well, sleeping well, working my body, moving my body well. And then mental illness is, okay, no, I'm in this place of crisis, and I need to really seek help as if I were going to an urgent care facility. So I think that for me, it makes sense that, if I'm not being proactive and I know I have all these stressors, that I'm going to land in the urgent care eventually. So the proactive approach to me is the one that logically makes the most sense. And I think at those times too, when we're kind of striking when the iron is still cool, there's a lot more resources. I have more time, I have more energy, I have less stressors, more resources within my family. If I'm seeking out childcare, then now I'm in crisis and I've kind of used all of my resources and there's less to kind of lift me up. So I always encourage that that proactive approach, I think will benefit in the long run much more.
Right.
That's kind of a logical,
Yeah.
obvious answer.
And it's
but
interesting how it parallels our physical health, isn't it?
Yes,
Right.
it does.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
for
if
sure.
we attend to something either anticipatory or regimented
Yes.
versus, oh my gosh, this is broken,
Yes.
and with a sense of urgency,
Yes.
changes the whole deal. Wonder if how could you build that into your parenting toolbox?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so we take kids to the dentist,
Mhm.
you get your your well baby, well child exam,
Yes.
Right.
all of that. Wouldn't that be interesting if you just started saying, hey, you know what, we're gonna go and talk to somebody.
Right.
But Mom, I'm okay. Well, no, that's because
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
you to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even coming in for family therapy,
Yeah.
let's just sit down as a family and
Yeah.
let's go through a few things. Maybe it's just we just want to check on everybody, but just coming in even for that once a month. I mean, that's the thing. Therapy can be you have the ability to build therapy out the way that you want it to be.
Yes.
So that would absolutely be helpful.
I think we've just struck on a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
We need
So too.
somebody write that down. So what might be a situation where, let's just talk about my mental health.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm thinking I'm going to go start doing that. I think we're so conditioned to think, well, but I'm not broken, I'm not this, I'm not that. Chris, I called you tomorrow and said, hey, you know what, I just want a mental health checkup.
Mhm.
What would that look like?
Well, somebody comes in, and the first thing is there anything in particular that brings you in?
Mhm.
And usually there's going to be a struggle with something, right?
Yeah.
Or they
Right.
wouldn't have made this call and they wouldn't have come in. And if we go back to the stigma question, I think a lot of it has to do with, well, if you're going to see a therapist or counselor, it means that you have a mental illness, you have a mental disorder,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I would tell you that most of the people that I see probably don't fall into that category, that they are simply trying to deal through some struggle in life. It could be a transition, it could be premarital counseling, it could be that they've retired,
Right.
but retirement is not going the way they thought it was going to go.
Sure.
And so now they're struggling, now they're unhappy with things, and they're trying to figure out what is going on, what can I do to get myself out of this rut. So there are, in career counseling,
Mhm.
counseling on decision-making and goal-setting, where people are stuck.
Yeah.
So there are all types of different reasons to come in and see a therapist who can help walk you through the things that you have not been able to uncover yourself,
Yeah.
Sure.
and talk about core values and desires and goals and things of that nature, that we don't set those
Right.
for them. We
Yes.
help them discover what they want.
Yeah.
Well, and do you think it's fair to say that running right alongside that fear is shame? Like, I should be able to
Do this all myself.
do this all
Yeah,
myself,
yeah,
fix
absolutely.
this, and what will people think?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's just retirement. Why can't I figure that out?
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think therapy has such a unique relationship built into it, where it's two people focusing on one person, where almost every other relationship in our world is, in our, relationships with other people, it's a dialogue. I'm worried
Back
about
and
what
forth.
you're going to think and your expectations of me, whereas it's such a unique, safe harbor in that therapy setting that, there's not any expectations that the therapist has for you. It's all self-led.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no judgment, no condemnation of anything that is brought to us.
So it feels like, in the progression of seeing a counselor,
Yes.
you have drama, trauma, either of those.
Mhm.
Then you have life change moments.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw a family today that I know well posted on Facebook. All the kids are off at college. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
It was kind of a joke, but I
Yeah.
think
No,
there was some
seriously.
awakening.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is.
That's like
Yeah.
I guess I got to get to know you
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So how about being proactive? Like, seems like this is a commercial for seeing you guys, but anticipatory, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, like we are in the midst of a demographic now that seems like a lot of our families have aging parents.
Yeah.
To your point a minute ago, like a family going in and saying, hey, grandma's about to enter this next level of care. We don't even know, we're afraid, she's afraid.
Yeah.
Seems like a good spot, maybe?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
For grandma to go, for y'all to go, for everybody to go?
For everybody to go.
Yeah.
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 So why can't we get people then to practice good mental care? Fear, shame, is there anything else?
Well, there are, barriers sometimes of financial resources,
Okay.
time resources.
Right.
So I think that shifting that culture that this, like you said, it's your life. That's where
Right.
the value is. But
Right.
for some reason, we're kind of programmed to think about all my responsibilities first instead of myself first.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that self-care. Am I going to take care of myself? Or I think some people's propensity is to take care of everybody else
Yeah.
and before they take care of
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
So mom's going to get the kids to therapy before she gets herself to
Yes.
therapy. You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, in this whole schema here, are there, what are the biggest things that bring people into your office? I'm going to guess addiction, anxiety,
yeah.
depression.
Right.
Yeah.
Are those the big three? I mean, what are other things that somebody's sitting out there right now saying, you know what, I'm just in a funk.
Yeah.
This will
Yeah.
pass.
Anger
Yeah.
management
Anger,
is
yes.
impulse control.
Yeah.
Grief.
Okay.
Grief.
Grief work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
School issues for me, I see a lot of school stuff come up in my practice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got another question. So we had a question about bullying. What, do you see that very often, Laura? You see some kids.
I do, yes. And
What's-
I've worked in schools as well, yes.
So, gosh, where would you even start? 10-year-old girl walks in and goes, I'm being bullied. I doubt that she says it like that. She probably comes in and
Yeah.
dissolves in tears.
Yeah.
And says, I'm sick to my stomach. I don't want to go to school.
Sure. Yeah.
Where do you start? What's the inroad to get into that?
Well, I think there are whole classes on that, but my kind of thumbnail is, I think that when you're working with somebody, there might be all these issues that other people could identify for them, but really, what is it? What is it that's really important to you? What are you valuing? And so, sometimes bullying, a parent could say, this is really affecting their time at school and their grades. But a kid could say, this is really affecting where I eat lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's going to look different, the conversation that we have, and maybe some of the intentional skills that we're working to build up, about being assertive and about making your feelings known. So it might look different, but I think the end goal is very similar about advocating for yourself and knowing yourself, what you want.
Are there things a parent should be on the lookout for with a kid who, you're suspecting something is up, but you just can't put your finger on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I think
yeah.
any depressive symptoms, so lack of appetite or acting out behavior, that's huge for kids. They're gonna maybe have tantrums. You mentioned not doing well in school.
Mhm.
Those are things that parents are going to see, and those are the red flags. Now, there's a lot of things, bullying included, that could be the cause of those types of things, but those are red flags just in general, I think, for parents. So
what about the other side? What if you find that you're the parent of the bully?
mm,
Where do you start on that? How do you acknowledge that?
right.
And I'm guessing maybe they learned how to be a bully somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you begin talking about that? Chris, what do you think?
Well, I think that, you have to self-examine
Mm,
first and say, okay, yeah, this child did learn this from somebody. What's my relationship with my child? Did they possibly learn it from me?
Mm-hmm.
Are there communication techniques that I use that are ineffective? Is there something that I should do differently? Or to question the child about, why are you doing this? did somebody do this to you?
Yeah.
Because typically the bully has been bullied, right,
Yeah.
by somebody. And so I think that you have to start exploring, where did this impulse come from
Yeah.
to lash out at somebody who is innocent? They generally have been victimized by it themselves, and I think we have to go further down the line to find out where have they run into problems, and let them know that, you know, we have to treat them with love and respect, but also with accountability. That bullying is not okay, and that we won't do that, and that there are going to be consequences to this, but we want to know why and
Yeah.
how did this start occurring, and how did you experience it?
Yeah.
So a parent can't just bully a bully out of being a bully.
No, it won't work.
That's right.
No, but I like what you said, Chris. That it's a heart examination first. You know,
Yeah.
so if I found out that one of my children was bullying another child at school, okay, what's going on here from me first, and then proceed to look into what's going on with my child.
You know, and
So-
I think that, you know, the prime example, you can see it at any youth sporting field,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
How are the
right.
parents acting? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are the parents bullying an umpire?
Right.
Are they bullying
the coach or
a referee or a
Right.
coach? Because these are things that kids observe, and they will model.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's change gears a minute and talk about the thing that you hear over and over in the news, unfortunately, lately, and it's the correlation between violence and mental illness.
Yeah.
That seems to be the quick default.
Sure.
Whenever somebody goes on a shooting rampage, especially,
Yeah.
we talk about, we need to be doing more with mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, more proactive. I guess what I'm asking for is just your gut feeling about how do we address those? Is there any substantiation between those?
Yeah.
What's your experience tell you?
Yeah, I mean, very well. The APA, the American Psychological Association, very quickly came out, especially after El Paso and Dayton, you know, said, hey, it's not about mental illness. And in fact, the research shows that very little of the incidents that have happened can be related to mental illness, and that it's probably more about access to guns and hateful rhetoric. And so what can we do to address those types of things? And so I think it does go back to maybe, as we've talked about bullying and things like that, that spirit, hateful rhetoric, when I
Yeah.
hate somebody else, or I make them feel like they are hated. Those are things that we need to look at a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a very sharp subject
Yes.
right now. I
Yes.
just completed a blog on this today, and having a dialogue about everything
Yeah.
that makes up this epidemic
Yeah.
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 that we're going through. Starting with rhetoric, political rhetoric,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
divisive language,
Right.
threatening language.
Yeah.
It's got to stop. I think that we need to begin educating our children about tolerance
Yeah.
for racial, social, gender issues, sexual orientation, these things that can cause bullying to occur. And we've got to teach our children, our future generations, more about knowing how to disagree in a civil manner. We don't have to agree with everything. But then I think we've also got to look at the laws on, assault rifles and, multi-round magazines and things of this nature.
Yeah.
This is all common sense, and it will get the public up in arms, because if we pick on one thing that is close to them, it will be considered an attack.
Right.
And I think that as thoughtful and reasoning people, we have to look at every aspect of this at every aspect of it, including mental health and background checks.
Yes, right.
Well, and just like we do with our politics, we've become, I think, particularly focused on like one issue person or
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah.
Right.
And to your point, like the violence epidemic has so many pieces.
Yeah.
But the minute you touch on mine, I'm going to tune you out on all the
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we teach kids, adults, parents, grandparents to model
Yeah.
tolerance,
Yeah.
resilience,
Yeah.
listening skills?
Yeah, I do want to maybe not directly answer your question, but I think our society has gotten very good at understanding suicide and embracing that as a caring step to say, are you thinking about hurting yourself?
Right.
And I don't think we've expanded that to, are you thinking about hurting yourself or somebody else? And I think maybe just shifting that a little
Right.
can care for those folks that really are incredibly hurt and needing assistance just the same as someone who is experiencing those suicidal thoughts too.
Right. Yeah. I think that's important to know, like, because how many people do you hear, like,
Yeah.
homicidal thoughts?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
and that's a scary word.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm thinking about killing somebody else. But that's important. And again, it's not the difference between mental health and mental illness.
Mhm.
You know, is that a mental illness issue?
Mhm.
No, not necessarily.
Mhm.
Can it be? Sometimes, yes,
Mhm.
but not always. And so I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I hear you saying is we need to continue to foster more conversations.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
About all of this.
Yes.
About helping people understand the difference.
Yes.
Mhm.
And educating
Yes.
people.
Right.
Because I think for the most part, we, out of fear, create this this shield of ignorance that I'm going to hide behind.
Yes.
And I know just a little bit of my truth,
Mhm.
which allows me to judge everybody else.
Right.
So where might that start? Does that start in places of worship? Does that start at home? Does that start at school? Like if you left here tonight, where would you go say, okay, you know what, I'm going to start doing this at
Yeah.
your practice?
D, all the above?
Yeah, that's right. There's
Is that
not
a
a wrong
choice?
answer.
Is that a choice?
Yeah.
Yeah. All of those
Yeah.
are,
Yes.
are great answers. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm thankful for this and for this
Yes.
space, and that the church has provided this and has made this a priority.
Absolutely.
As a therapist, that just excites me
Yeah.
so much, because the church has made this a priority to even have these conversations. And for so long, I don't think churches have talked
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah.
So,
And I think there's
Absolutely.
such a deep spiritual tie to mental health
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
And some people don't recognize that, but there's been a lot of research done on the role of spirituality and
Absolutely.
mental health and how we are able to handle things and what our level of resilience
Yeah.
is.
Exactly. We have another question?
Yep, we have a question specifically about marriage counseling.
Ooh.
Is it beneficial to get marriage counseling alone?
Ooh.
As in only one half of the relationship is willing?
Yeah.
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 I think that's the key word, that last
Oh,
phrase is
mhm.
willing.
Yeah.
Willing. Yeah.
So do I go anyway if my partner's not?
I see. Yes.
Yeah.
Is my answer. Yes.
Each one
Yeah,
you can
that's-
Yeah. You
take a stab at
can.
this, all three of you.
Well, I think that something is better than nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, when
Yeah.
when it comes to the marriage relationship, and I think probably each of us have seen
Mhm.
people in this situation. My husband, my wife won't come in. There's something wrong with our marriage, and what we can do is provide them with tools for their own behavior, right? And helping people to recognize that they are only responsible for themselves and that they can only control themselves.
Right.
Right? And how they respond to others is something that they will have to work on. And that's kind of a one-sided equation to this. Much better to have both people in session where you can work with both of them, you can model behaviors, you can watch conversations occur, and we can point out and observe the things that we're seeing in terms of, aggressive or violent verbalizations,
Right.
or withdrawing and going to silence. I would much prefer a couple come in for marriage counseling, but certainly if one is unwilling, then I would work with the other.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you add, Laura?
Gosh, I thought that was so well spoken. I think that sometimes we have to be really upfront about that, though, when you're kind of doing that intake part, because the therapeutic relationship can sometimes be that it's kind of a turning away from the couple then, if you're just doing one-on-one. So just being really upfront about this is, an attempt to mend this or work on this or really keep this in the forefront as we're talking about these, so that the therapist can, really stand in for, have you thought about this perspective from your partner? Or just being really upfront about that when you're working in that intake process would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I've had it go both ways, where the one individual comes in, and maybe eventually there is some change, and maybe their partner comes with them eventually, and then I've had to go the other way, but either way, I think the goal is that they do come in, and hopefully things are improved.
Yes.
And in some way.
Yes.
It may not always end exactly the way that you want, but I think it's important to be able to come in no matter what.
Yes.
So.
Control what you
It's-
can control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
It seems like an interesting kind of tactic sometimes
Yeah.
of,
Mhm.
I'm not going to go, so I'm going to just stonewall,
Ooh.
our situation.
Yeah.
We got another online question.
Yep, this one's more practical. What is the average cost of counseling?
Ooh.
That's a great
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Is there an average cost? There's probably a range.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
let's say, pre-insurance.
Okay.
A lot of, I don't know, just raise your hand. Do you take insurance or no?
No.
Take insurance.
Okay.
Yes.
So I pay my deductible.
Right.
And then on top of that, there's a copay
Yes.
or an agreed,
Sure.
all that insurance
Yeah,
language, right?
depends on your policy, that kind of thing. So could just be a straight up copay, or it could be like a co-insurance type thing. Once you meet your deductible, you want to check with your insurance company.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I'll say.
Yes.
So just to get to the answer,
Right.
$100 to $150 an hour?
Yeah, so there's also a great resource, Psychology Today,
Mhm.
which usually has a good kind of scale that's published for each therapist too. So
Yeah.
So we said
It's a
earlier about
resource.
tire kicking, i.e. get to know your therapist.
Right.
That should be a question you should ask just right
absolutely,
off the bat, right?
Sure,
yes.
absolutely.
That first phone call.
What's your charge?
Yeah.
Right.
And you guys don't
Right.
take offense to that?
No.
Not one bit.
No, we
All
expect
right,
it.
good deal.
So-
We got another question.
Back to marriage counseling. Have you ever, in premarital counseling, recommended that a couple not get married?
Oh wow, that is so funny.
Mhm.
I actually was talking about this the other day, about that fear that, if I go to premarital counseling, the counselor's just gonna say we should break up. Yeah, no.
You're a mess.
You're a
What
mess.
were you even
Sorry.
thinking?
What were you thinking? And whether you go to see a counselor or maybe your pastor for
Yeah.
premarital
Yeah,
counseling,
yeah.
like that's the stigma, I think, with premarital counseling. So I have never told someone that they need to break up, but I have had couples that have broken up after premarital counseling. So there's a difference there, and they were able to find the answer themselves. I think that's the big
Sure.
thing.
And
So,
I think the key there is that when people come in for premarital counseling, no matter how well they think they know each other, there are subjects that they have tiptoed around and
Yeah.
they have detoured
Right.
throughout their entire relationship. And it might be because those are embarrassing subjects, about sexuality or something like that. And as therapists, we're trained to have discussion about that.
Right.
And not be embarrassed about it, not be red-faced about it, but say, what are your expectations? How do you communicate? What was the environment you grew up in? Was there a lot of yelling? Because if somebody who came from a yelling family marries somebody who comes from a peaceful family,
Right.
there's going to be some trouble in how they communicate with each other. What do they expect financially? What are their hopes and dreams about children? Frequency of sexuality and types. I mean,
Sure.
all of these things that are taboo in just public conversation are things that we have to say, look, let's put it all on the table, because when you're married in every aspect.
Yeah.
right.
It seems like that's another one of those, when we were talking earlier about self-care,
Yeah.
that I wish, for churches here at Trietsch, we kind of have a standard that if you ask us to have a wedding here, we won't do your wedding without 3 or 4 premarital counseling
Right.
sessions.
Right.
I wish that was like across the board standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or a parent said to the bride and groom, hey, we're happy to help you with the cost, and we're going to put aside, $2,000 for your premarital counseling
Right.
tab
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
We just skip right over that, don't we?
Yeah, that's one that a lot of people skip over.
So I did have an occasion, I was a puppy pastor, and I had a couple who, they were just a train wreck, and I didn't tell them I wouldn't marry them. I asked if they would delay the wedding,
Yeah.
and they got mad and left and got married like a week later by justice of the peace.
Okay.
And I hope they're together. It was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
it was hard. I remember
Yes.
being really terrified, I think they're going to hate me, and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
And
what it is.
I need to apologize because I didn't know if on this podcast I was supposed to bring up the subject of sexuality, frequency, and types. So if anybody's been offended by that.
Oh, yeah, no, let's talk about that.
Oh.
We can take this a whole lot longer tonight if you want to. Everybody put the kids to bed. We're going to take this up a notch, and this will be Pastor Doug's last podcast here at Trietsch, but it could be a lot of fun.
Glad I could help.
Well, okay, I'm just going to say my little 2 cents worth. We have to model that kind of conversation
Absolutely.
Yep.
just
Yes.
as much as we
Right.
model everything
Absolutely,
else.
yes.
Sure.
That kind of, if there are trends, in this new day of self-awareness, I can't think of hardly anything that shouldn't be on the table,
Yes.
right?
I agree.
Well, and then, so if we're going to talk about parents talking about bullying, or
Yeah.
parents talking about suicide, or parents talking with their kids, then we've got to talk about sexuality too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing that parents
Yeah.
have to talk to their kids about.
Yeah.
So,
It seems like the thing that our kids are perceptive,
yes.
and it's that thing we don't talk about is that thing that they begin to wonder more about,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and then create their own stories.
Yeah.
Right.
And we all have had our different experiences, either personally or a friend or our kids who go, well, hey, where'd you learn that about sexuality? Well, I don't know, I just thought, or I just made that
Yeah.
up.
Mhm.
And there's some really outlandish, crazy stories.
Sure.
That will be in our next podcast.
Yes. Right. Whole nother
So,
thing.
so speaking of good advice for parents,
Yes.
do you have like a little toolbox that you say to parents, hey, read this book, go to this website, watch this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Before we wrap up tonight, kind of give your endorsement to a product or two
Mm-hmm.
or a resource.
So something that I feel like I've recommended a lot and used in my practice. I think mindfulness is something that's a big it's a big topic right
Yeah.
now overall, and I'm sure y'all know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Apps like Headspace or Insight Timer,
Mhm.
those apps are huge for people to just take that time to meditate. If you pray, you can pray during that time, and I think that's a really important thing, and has been really big for a lot of my clients, like to have that access right there, even those guided meditations, things like that. So,
All right, Laura, what's in your toolbox?
So I think understanding how the brain works is such a powerful
Mm,
piece.
yeah.
I love Dan Siegel's work. He
Mhm.
has a book called The Whole Brain Child.
Yeah.
And there's another author, and I apologize, I'm forgetting that author's name, but they have comics. So they write about all the skills, and then they visually, draw them out for parents to understand how could this look. And for me, as a parent myself, that's so helpful, because reading something and then seeing it is so different.
Yeah.
So I love all of the work, but especially The Whole Brain Child is something.
What was that guy's name?
Dan Siegel.
Like
It's
a seagull?
Siegel.
Ah,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Chris, what do you got?
I would probably lean into some resources that I recommend in counseling with adolescents and adults. And I've been, as you're aware, focused on Enneagram study. And I think that is a very valuable study for self-awareness and
Yeah.
discovering our motivations and our behaviors, the motivations behind our behaviors. Suzanne Stabile wrote a book called The Road Back to You, which I think is very valuable. And when I look to marriage counseling, one of the books that I like a lot, actually a couple of them, one is called Crucial Conversations,
Yeah.
and the other is called The 5 Love Languages
Yeah.
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
Gary Chapman.
Mhm.
And The 5 Love Languages is really a great book for an individual who wants to come in because their partner will not come in.
Yeah.
It helps to train people on how to speak somebody else's love language, not expecting anything at all in return,
Mhm.
but watching what happens when we live into our relationships that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we live in a day and time when there are just so many great resources.
There are.
You know, I have a moderate commute, so I spend some time every day on, started listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also have this habit of getting anxious about things I don't need to get anxious about.
Sure.
So I've discovered this podcast called Anxiety Slayer.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And just if anxiety is your thing, these 2 doctors, and they talk about all sorts of spiritual practices and mindfulness, and every day there's a different topic. And I have found, I've started listening to it in Plano, and I'm actually a little calmer when I get to Trietsch.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Even through all the traffic on 121
Oh, yeah.
and other times,
Yeah.
you know. So, and there's just, gosh, man, I would love tonight just to keep dumping out
I know, right?
great resources because
I know.
there's so
There are
so
so
many
many.
things. All right, so Chris, let's start with you. We're about to wrap up. If somebody liked what you said tonight or didn't like what you said tonight, want to come beat you up, what's your where would they find you?
Okay, cjrcounseling.com. That has all of the information about what I'm trained in, who I work with, rates, blogs, forms that folks would need to fill out before they come in so that we can walk through, the informed consent and the intake process, things of that nature. And rockhillcounseling.info is the Aubrey site that I'm located at. And then they can call me at 972-822-8338.
It's a shame you didn't have that emblazoned on your nice
I
black
was going
shirt
to wear
tonight.
I was going to wear
I
a
think
T-shirt
that-
with all this.
I think that would have been great. Okay, quick question. Can you do if I want to do a little tire kicking with you, can I do that over the phone, or do I need to come to the office?
Yeah.
Just to find out, he sounds weird, or he sounds nice, or she sounds really sweet,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that a phone deal?
Absolutely, call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Laura, what's your info?
Sure. So it's Laura O'Reilly, LauraOreilly, LCSW.com. My phone number, my email's all on the website. A little bit about me and my approach is on there as well.
And your offices?
Here.
Chris's is just up the street from the church here in
Yeah.
Flower Mound.
I'm here in Flower Mound
You're here in
too.
Flower Mound.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. Clem.
thecentercounseling.org. Again, everything's on their phone number, or even making an appointment online. And then for those of you that are in Flower Mound, I am here at Trietsch on Tuesdays.
Every Tuesday.
Every
Nice.
Tuesday, I'm here.
Yeah.
So
Guys, thank you. I feel like we could just keep talking.
We
I
could.
want to throw out I'm super intrigued now with the whole sexuality thing. But
you
that's
can come back.
Yeah,
so
we are
yeah.
we're probably
If
available.
the public demands us to come back, we will do that.
Yes.
So thanks to everybody that's helped make these 4 weeks possible. Alyssa Robinson is like the genius behind the scene and is helping produce all of this. And big kudos to her. And on behalf of Trietsch, we'd love to have you come worship with us. We're a great faith community, and we welcome everybody, and everybody means everybody. So come check us out some Sunday. You guys have a great evening. Good night.